Hello everyone and welcome to Guild Wars 2 Daily for today. Today I think we're going to be in the Caudicus's Manor dungeon, hopefully an explorable path depending on whether the people I meet up with have actually already finished story mode. I'm hoping they will have. As you can tell, I haven't filmed it yet. But yeah, since it's Tuesday we should be doing dungeon stuff, so that should be fun. Why Caudicus? Honestly, I don't really want any of the items there. I don't think any of them look that amazing, but I've already got a fair few tokens just from having run that dungeon many times anyway, so it seems like a good bet to me. Maybe eventually I'll want the gift, I figure, for a legendary weapon at some point down the line, so the tokens will always be a nice idea. Also, I've already done a lot of coverage of the catacombs already on the channel, so we haven't done much of Caudicus's Manor. We'll just have a look at that. It's kind of a fun one. I quite like it. At first I felt like it was a bit out of line from other dungeons, especially considering the original balance where it was so easy, but actually now I think it's quite fun, and it's grown on me even though I'm not doing it for the rewards, which is very odd. I don't know what that says about the end game, whether it's a really good thing I've been playing it so much despite not wanting the rewards at the end, or what. So thanks very much to everyone who came. Obviously only 5 of us can be there in the footage this time, but I'm hoping other people will form their own groups too, and this can be a nice weekly, hey, we're going to do a dungeon and we can actually be 100% sure there's at least someone else there to pug for it, because that's a bit of a problem. I've always kind of maintained that Guild Wars 2 doesn't really need a dungeon finder, but as time's going on I may have to eat my words. It seems like sometimes it is quite hard to find a group to run certain dungeons, quite difficult indeed. A lot of people are just resorting to going to Lion's Arch and calling out there, and while that's kind of helpful, it would be nice just to know that there are other people around there frequently, which sadly there aren't. So yeah, at least this way, if you haven't done many dungeons maybe, or you'd like to be doing them more, then you can be sure every week there will be a group of us doing one dungeon or another. And again, if you want to participate, you can follow me on Twitter. Anyway, since it's Tuesday, really I should be talking about expansions today. Yesterday I highlighted what I think will be an interesting direction for them to go in concerning the other continents, why we might not really go to the other continents for a long time. I didn't actually mention last week that there is very much the possibility that even though the expansions are about fighting the dragons, they could be fighting the dragons and something else. So we might get an expansion that lets us go to Cantha, for example, and allows us to fight Kralkatorrik. And yes, it will make that section of the continent we can currently see available, but at the same time it might make this new continent available too. I think that might be asking for quite a lot though, but that is certainly something they could do. They could have you fight a dragon in an original location, say the Maguma Wastes, and then it runs off somewhere else, just as I kind of think Kralkatorrik will flee north back to where he woke up when we fight him. I think I can expect that happening, and then us going up through the brand. But that could happen with any of the dragons, and they don't have to go to another area on the map we can currently see. They could go off the map somewhere, so we could see whatever is to the west of the Maguma Wastes, which is something people have been speculating about for a very long time, and it would be quite exciting. Or we might, when we're fighting the deep sea dragon, it might swim to the south, and then we'll end up in Cantha and so forth. So they can cover multiple topics, and I think that they'll have to end up doing that. They've got a lot of things out there in the game right now that they can pick back up, and to just delay all of them just so that we can kill the Elder Dragons first and then do them all one at a time seems a bit stupid. The plot can be so much more involved and have a lot more depth and intrigue and fun stuff in it if they double up on the different things they're talking about each time, which I think they probably will do. So that was a big thing that last week after I'd finished recording it I kind of wanted to go back to, because yes, there's all this evidence will stay on the map, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the be all and end all. I don't think I put it across that way last week, but do consider it. This week though, since we know that Halloween is coming so soon, I kind of wanted to talk about one weird thing, some kind of an odd anomaly that I have no idea what ArenaNet are doing. It's one of these story threads that they seem to want to pick up at some point, but I don't know how they're ever going to integrate into the plot or how we're going to see it for an expansion, but I do think we're going to see some kind of update later on explaining the progress of this, and it might even come in this Halloween update we have coming ahead in less than a week's time right now. It's to do with a group of people called the Lunatic Court, and this is very much to do with the Halloween lore. So I'm going to hold certain bits off because I'd like to do a spotlight on this guy in particular on Friday, but Mad King Thorn, right, is in many people's eyes the main character, if there were such a thing, of Halloween. A lot of Halloween, why they celebrate it, or as they call it interior, Mad King's Day, is because there's this guy that's currently in a section of the underworld called the Mad Realm, and from within there he's trying to break back out. He died a long time ago and he's trying to get back out and come to Tyria. Now currently he's got this powerful magic on him that allows him to leave his realm, the Mad Realm in the underworld, one day a year. One day every every single Tyrion calendar year, and that is Halloween. That's why the Tyrians celebrate Halloween. And when he comes out, he casts all this crazy magic that does ridiculous things just for his own amusement. So he'll turn, in Guild Wars 1 at least, he would turn just random NPCs into various different things, and they'd be shocked to wake up and find that they were suddenly an ogre or an undead skeletal archer, and he would just terrorize people, but for his own amusement. And they actually say a lot in the lore for Halloween or Mad King's Day in Tyria that really it's quite a scary, horrible time, and people really don't like this guy. But there's this very happy kind of jokey spin on everything, on all the quests, on all the dialogue, and I think that kind of plays into obviously real world Halloween that's supposed to be scary or whatever, but really it's just an excuse for people to go out, dress up, and have a lot of fun. And that really comes through in the Tyrion Halloween as well. Now, the idea about him only being able to leave for one day out of the Mad Realm is something that ArenaNet started to address in the later years of Guild Wars 1's lifetime. They, from 2009, introduced us to this group of people called the Lunatic Court. Now, these are living people that actually seek to have Mad King Thorn, and Mad King Thorn himself seeks for this too, to be able to break out of the underworld, to be able to break out of the Mad Realm all year, not just one day. And they wrote in this story about how there is a series of seals, as they call it, which first must be broken to reverse whatever this magic is that's preventing him from leaving the underworld. And once they're all broken, he can come out and he can be free, and he can come back to life, essentially. He might still be an undead, but he'll be back out and free to walk the mortal planes for as long as he possibly wants. And the Lunatic Court, for whatever reason, they're kind of working under his service, really want to see this happen. They want to see this crazy guy get out all year. And you might just think, okay, well, surely it ends there. He's not going to be able to come out all year, because then it would be like we'd had a Halloween festival all year. And that's a good point. How could this ever come to be? But in a really bizarre kind of twist, you actually find that you, the player, on Mad King's Day in Halloween, in the later years during those quests, you're actually kind of aiding the Lunatic Court. And they're hoping to break Mad King Thorn out by breaking these seals, but inadvertently, you, the player, help them do that because they're trying to tackle other problems at the same time. So, in particular, was a big long story that came out about how one of the fallen gods, the previous god of death, the god before Grenth was the god of death, a man named Doom, was actually himself breaking out of the underworld too. He'd been imprisoned there by Doom and not fully defeated, and throughout the Halloween quest you kind of team up with the Lunatic Court, who teach you all about this guy, and you help them to defeat him once and for all. And with the conclusion of one of the Halloween events in a past year actually involved this massive update to one of the end game areas in Guild Wars 1, where we had this new boss and we got to fight this fallen god, this guy Doom. Now, by doing that, the hint is we actually break another one of Mad King Thorn's seals by helping to defeat Doom. Another one of the seals is supposedly broken during one of the later updates to the game, again in the way of the war in Kryta, which was kind of this extension to the story that was released for free to the players. And through this, you return royal blood to the Krytan throne, and by doing that, they then write in the story that that breaks one of the seals too. And there's this whole story about how slowly these seals are being broken and the Lunatic Court are seeking to break them. And already you can see the effects of them being broken. Later on as well, one of the later updates was PvP was getting a little bit stale for Guild Wars 1. So they added essentially a flavour of the month mechanic to PvP quite openly. A lot of people don't like that kind of thing, but they just very blatantly said, no, look, we're going to do this because at least it spices things up slightly. And this was in the form of something they called Flux. It was a mechanic called the Flux mechanic. And this put a different universal effect on all players in PvP that changed every month. And this would change the builds people used and the tactics people used in PvP to keep things fresh. And again, I'm not really making a commentary on whether that was a good idea or whether they should have just strived to have better balance or what. The game was on its last legs. I quite agree with the flavour of the month mechanic they ended up putting in, the Flux. But in any case, the idea was that these fluxes are real things happening in the story around places close to the mists. So PvP in Guild Wars 1 took place on an area called the Battle Isles, that in the story, we can't see the Battle Isles, they're long off the map in Guild Wars 2, far to the south. But in the story, they are there because of a portal to the underworld. It's an area where the physical realm is close to the mists. And because these seals are being broken by the Lunatic Court, these fluxes began to appear in those locations. So it started to affect the real world. And this also kind of has these insinuations, therefore, that releasing Mad King Thorn all year wouldn't just directly bring him back to life, it would cause all kinds of other crazy stuff to start happening. So we know that these seals are broken, and we even had statements from Arena themselves saying that over the coming years, in Guild Wars 1 this is, they were going to be diving into these stories more about how more and more of these seals would get broken in their attempt to free the Mad King. Well, then none of those updates ever really came out. They slowly, I guess, reduced resources of people that could actually work on Guild Wars 1, and we didn't actually see the fruits of that story come to be in Guild Wars 1. It never really happened. You can still see on the wiki, it's got all these comments that the devs have made. Oh yeah, this will be, come back to this later, we'll come back to it. But they didn't. And now, we've got Guild Wars 2 to release, 250 years later. And the question on my mind is, what did the Lunatic Court do in those 250 years? But first of all, we have an update from the devs that say in Guild Wars 1 we're going to have some kind of update. But I've kind of lost hope that we'll be seeing in Guild Wars 1 any more of these seals be broken. We might see the odd quest here or there, but clearly they can't have succeeded in their plans to have him released. Otherwise, Guild Wars 2 would have launched and we wouldn't be doing a plot about the Elder Dragons necessarily. There would have been a whole load of other shit thrown in there too about Mad King Thorn, but there's not been any. And once again, Mad King's Day is about to come and everyone's preparing for him to come back out into the mortal realm. So they didn't succeed in the 250 years. What does that mean now for the future? It means for future updates in Guild Wars 1 that we're not going to see that. We might see more seals break, but we'll never see it finish. But does that mean that, since they'd originally said for Guild Wars 1 we'd see more of these break, is that going to be a plot we'll eventually look into for expansions for Guild Wars 2? It's really confusing because, as I said at the start, I don't think we could ever see them succeed in their quest to break all of the seals, but at the same time, the players have kind of been on the side of the Lunatic Court, at least for now. Eventually we might find that we're fighting against the Lunatic Court because in some expansion they're really close to freeing the Mad King, we realise what a disaster this is going to be, and then they end up as an enemy in one of the expansions. There's certainly story that they've laid out here, these extra seals that will be broken, but how they actually handle it as we go forward. Are we going to free Mad King and then he's going to turn out to be a good guy after all and we're going to enlist him as his aide against other Elder Dragons? Well, I find that very doubtful, but at the same time there's a lot of story also about how Mad King Thorn doesn't really like or is a personal rival to another character, a lich in the game called Palawa Joko, and that guy is certainly set up to be one of our enemies in Guild Wars 2. He's enslaved and killed and he's totally under the control of all the humans in the land called Elona to the south. So what if they did free the Mad King and we used him to help fight against Palawa Joko? But Palawa Joko, at the same time as being a villain in Guild Wars 1, was just like Mad King Thorn, a villain, but someone that we always kind of were on the side of in a really weird way. It's very interesting, and it's one of the more confusing things that they could take forward going into Guild Wars 2's development. One of those stories that we probably will see be addressed in expansion, but how exactly they handle it, I don't know. We might see something really interesting in just a couple of days when Halloween comes out. Maybe we'll find out that the Lunatic Court have broken all the seals except just one more, and these Halloween related events are going to be to do with stopping them. Maybe it will be a story that just always stays to do with Halloween, or maybe, as it potentially could, it will branch out into something much more than that. Maybe it will turn into a full kind of expansion storyline. I just thought that was one of the interesting things. Since we are in kind of the Halloween spirit for this week, I thought that'd be a nice one to bring up because it's getting on. It was in the later days of Guild Wars 1's life cycle that they actually introduced this idea of the seals to us, but now that's a reasonably old story now that we're kind of still looking at, well, how are they going to move it forward, because it's certainly not come to a conclusion, and we might have that conclusion on Monday, or maybe it will go even longer. That's something I'll be keeping a lookout for. Now, at the start of today's video, I was going to mention a little bit of news which I'd forgotten yesterday. There was another concept artist spotlight on Friday, again, also after I'd put out my Friday episode. I forgot about it yesterday, so if you do want to see the new one, you can find a link in the description too for that. Other than that, there's not really been much other official news. I did see ArenaNet tweet that you can now buy prepaid cards, essentially for gems, at certain retailers, so that's available. And also, they said that they'd be at some convention in Italy, the Lucca Comics and Games International Festival. That'll be on the 1st to the 4th of November, so if you're interested in that too, if you're watching from Italy. First, hi, I didn't realise anyone did watch from Italy, but yeah, that's going on too. So aside from that though, guys, that's pretty much everything. Thanks very much for watching Guild Wars 2 Daily. Can't wait for Halloween, to be honest, especially if I'm going to be talking about all of the Halloween related stuff this week. Yeah, can't wait. Anyway, I'll see you next time.